Good afternoon. Well, we know that the room's going to fill up a little more as people realize that they're late for the panel, but we are going to start now. So, welcome to the 1 o'clock panel. We are going to be discussing best practices for commercial cannabis horticulture. I am your host for the panel, Shane Golos, and I'm also host of the Shaping Fire podcast. If you enjoy listening to interviews with the top minds in cannabis, I encourage you to grab one of my flyers for the podcast at the door. Every week I speak to a different cannabis luminary and they teach you all about their expertise. Let us first welcome our guests. Starting on the far end, Brian Kenton from Burger. In the middle, we've got Casey Rivera from Yerba Buena. And right here next to me is Casey Hubbs from Orgrow. Let's give a warm welcome. So these are merely highlights of each speaker's bio. I encourage you to Google them or approach them after the panel for more information. Let's start next to me here with Casey Hubbs. Casey is the Laboratory Director, Head of Research and Development, as well as the Grow Team Lead for Orgrow, LLC, a large Tier 3 cannabis producer processor in Moxie, Washington. She has a degree in herbal science as a certified herbalist with knowledge in sustainable farming, product development, formulation, QA/QC, standard operating procedures, and plant extraction. Next to Casey is Casey. Casey Rivera is co-owner and lead cultivator at Yerba Buena in Oregon. Casey has over 20 years of indoor, outdoor, and greenhouse cultivation experience with a heavy emphasis on sustainable and green practices. He also designs commercial growing facilities for other cannabis companies. And on the far end is Brian Kenton, graduated from, I wanted to ask you, what is the name of this university? Is it Guelph? Guelph. From the University of Guelph with an honors science degree in environmental horticulture. He majored in plant physiology with a minor in plant production, plant pathology, and plant entomology. Brian has been a grower advisor at Burger for over 10 years, working with clients to establish successful protocols and engage in trials set up to the highest of standards. So we've got a fantastic qualified panel today, and we're going to chat for about 40 minutes and then take about 10-15 minutes of questions, and then we'll be complete. So we're going to start at the far end with a question for Brian, and then everyone else will have an opportunity to weigh in their opinions as well. So Brian, what is a common error that can be avoided when scaling up from a Prohibition era size grow of, let's say, about 100 blooming plants to a very large licensed commercial cannabis grow for cannabis companies?
I don't know if it would be an error, but
You're a little closer to the mic.
It's more an understanding that basically you're not dealing with, say, several hundred square feet, but now I do work with facilities, and I do most of my work in Canada as a consultant in that, but I do work with facilities that are in the 10 to 15 acre range, and so the information or the practices that you've utilized before, especially once we get into what I call a high-tech or high-intensity range, it just amplifies itself. You can use some of the similar practices that you use in small production, but now you have to understand that, especially with the companies I'm working for, they're looking for very high yield in the shortest period of time. And in Canada, the federal government regulates all medical marijuana production, so we also have to answer to the federal government. And my job basically is again to then rehome the ideas of cultural practices, include very extensive environmental practices that are going to create the highest yield with the best quality in a shorter period of time.
Right on. Casey in the middle. So the question is, when scaling up from a Prohibition era grow of around 100 plants to a large licensed grow, what are the common errors that you can see being avoided with a little forethought?
So one of the biggest issues that I come across and see quite frequently is improper planning. And planning starts at beginning with your business development. Understanding what type of cannabis cultivation facility you're trying to establish. Are you establishing a facility that is going to produce as much as possible? Are you establishing a facility that is going for the highest quality? Are you establishing a research facility? So understanding what your motive is and what your business practice is extremely important first step. And at that point, you begin to plan your next steps. That planning can go many different ways depending on what your business model is. And depending on whether you're growing indoors, outdoors, greenhouse. So understanding and developing your business model with a really high strength at the beginning is really important.
Yeah, I'll just kind of play on that a little bit. Also, having proper procedures and processes in order before you get going is really important, because if you have issues and problems at a, sorry about that, can you guys hear me? Okay, if you're trying to deal with problems on a small scale, they're just going to intensify and get larger when you try and upscale. So if you have your processes in order and like Casey said next to me, kind of having a goal and good business practices and knowing which direction your company is going to go towards is a really good idea, because some companies focus mostly on edibles, some focus on clones, some will do concentrates or the plethora. And so if you know which direction you're going to go in and you have those processes, it will help a lot.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea that if you have a problem that is small at your small grow, when you scale it up, your problems are likely going to scale up as well. Yeah. Casey Rivera. So commercial monoculture crops of all kinds have pest issues because of its lack of biodiversity and other predators. What is a suggestion you have for commercial growers to avoid losing whole crops to pests?
Yeah, that's a difficult one for everybody. So the cannabis plant is one of the most diverse plants on the face of the planet. Varietals, grow habits, environments, the lineages on where these plants come from are in numerous different areas with numerous different environments. So knowing your strains, knowing what's going into those strains is extremely important. The number one most important thing is pest management. Being proactive as opposed to reactive is always the best approach to it. And having a pest management program where you act like you have pests even though you don't, take care of your plant health, is going to set you up for success in the long run. You mentioned the monoculture crop. That's a tough one. There's a lot of people that say, I've got this variety, I can produce X amount of pounds per light, I'm going to go for it. What happens if that one variety kind of digresses genetically a little bit, right? You have nothing to back yourself up with. So diversifying your genetics, diversifying them in a way to where you're understanding those genetics before you put them into a population, before you're counting on them for production is really key. I see a lot of people go for it with 50 strains, with 100 strains, and they lose focus on what these strains are doing. It becomes extremely hard at that point to figure out what are my strains benefiting from, or what am I hindering my strains with. So in my opinion, pest management starts at the beginning, and it's always something that you need to be reevaluating depending on what strains you have. We have about 30 different strains at our facility, and each one of those strains we have to handle a little bit differently on our management program. We primarily use predatorial insects as our main mode of defense, as well as other natural myco-insecticides, bacteria, and whatnot. So learning how the responses of the plants are to each of these methods is really important. The more data you collect, the better your program is going to become.
I've got a clarifying question before we move on, Casey. So you said that one of the good ideas is to work as if you have a pest infestation now to prevent it. And then when you described your palette of preventatives, you had both pesticide sprays, but also beneficial insects. I'm assuming that when you're talking about planning ahead, you don't mean spraying when there aren't pests. You're talking about more leaning on beneficial insects because you really probably don't want to add chemicals until they're necessary. Would that be a correct interpretation?
That's true. Well, when I mention pesticides, a lot of people get this idea of chemicals bad. A pesticide is just anything that combats a pest. It can be a myco-insecticide, so using fungi, using bacteria, using calcium, enriching your plants to be healthy, so that way the bugs don't want to attack your plants. That's the most important.
Right. And so Casey, on this end, the same original question, what suggestion do you have for commercial growers scaling and pest issues?
Yeah, so preventative maintenance is going to be your number one. Knowing, kind of having a protocol set up prior to even having plants in your facility is probably a good idea. We're indoor mostly. We do some outdoor. And we have scrubs, we have hair nets, beard nets, and just trying to implement those things in the beginning and making it a habit, because it's really easy to get going, and then it's a lot harder to implement those good practices on the back end. And also, one thing that was hard for us in the beginning when we were getting off the ground is that we were submerged right in the middle of hop fields. And so getting to know like what agricultural problems are already close to your facility or in your area is really important, because you'll know what to kind of expect and what exposures you can get. Also, like Casey said, implementing preventative procedures, also like companion plants. So if you do have outdoor grow, look into what companion plants mean. Some of them have symbiotic relationships with the plants themselves to help them grow healthier. Fungi, different kinds of bio management, and I think that if you start off that way, you'll have a better chance to kind of combat it and prevent it.
I think that idea of knowing your neighborhood is really insightful, because a lot of us think that the neighborhood of our grow ends either at the wall of the greenhouse or the warehouse or at the fence line, but that's just not the case. Where I'm from in Washington on Vashon Island, one of the problems that we run into a lot is a interior mold called botrytis, which here in Arizona I bet you see a lot less of that since it's so wonderfully dry and great growing environment. But up in the Pacific Northwest we get botrytis a lot. And after speaking to some expert botanists in the area about why we have such bad botrytis, and they're like, well, yeah, sure, it's cold and you've got wet nights and misty, foggy mornings. And they're like, but really, it's the wine fields down in Oregon. And we're like, well, what? And they explained that to make late bottled vintage Rieslings in Oregon, they actually spray botrytis on the grapes so that the grapes shrivel up faster. Well, that makes its way blowing up to Washington. And so being aware of what is in your environment that could be adding X variables to your grow is very important. Right on. So Casey, on this end, we're going to start with you on the next question. So, and Casey Rivera already touched on this a little bit, but we're going to go farther down this path. So many new growers start with a wide variety of cultivars because they want to grow something for every taste in the market, and while others focus on just a few cultivars and focus on growing those effectively. How do you balance that for yourself at a commercial level between having enough variety for the market, but also not having there be so much variety that you can't tend to each specific cultivar's needs specifically? Right.
So we have probably 30 to 40 strains in our facility right now, which is kind of heavy. We're trying to narrow it down, and what I think is probably a better approach for like our market is having 5 to 7 flagships, something that you can own in the market, something that you're really, really, really successful at growing, that people are going to want to come back for, is a good idea. And then also having enough strains in your back pocket that if you do lose genetic diversity, or your genetics start to degrade over time, and you can have something that you're working with to pull out and replace it with, or have time to increase those genetics by cloning and making them stronger. Yeah, I think that's
Casey.
Yeah, I think Casey hit the nail on the head with that. The more you diversify your strain database, the more you have to pay attention to. And that starts at the beginning. Knowing what your lineage of your strains are gives you a better indication on how they're going to grow, the problems that you're going to see with them. One thing that we do at Yerba Buena is we really are close to what the market needs. Obviously, we don't just grow Blue Dreams and OGs. We really kind of, as well as we want to shape the market with what we find is a good genetic and what we're breeding ourselves, but also coming out with good varieties and really solid varieties that the market actually wants as well too. So we work really closely with all our partners, our dispensaries, our extraction companies, to find out what's working. And at that point, we figure out how best to grow a crop specifically for what that market is going to need. So there's a lot of ways we can shape the market, and then there's a lot of ways that we need to be listening to the market and responding. And you got to understand that that response is a 6 month or a year out. So you have to constantly be paying attention to what your genetics are doing and where they're going. One thing that we've done is we've separated our genetics into 3 categories. We have the A's, B's, and the C's. The A's are our strains that we can really sell a lot of. And so those are going to be naturally the ones that we're going to fill our rooms most with. The B's are the ones that sort of sell, but maybe are a little bit harder to grow. And so we'll plant those on an every other room type of cycle. And then the C's are kind of more of our research strains, the strains that we're really trying to work on and develop for the market, but they're not quite there yet. So you obviously don't want to put your C's and produce 100 pounds of those. You want to put those in a smaller area, really prove those genetics first, and then bring those to market when acceptable.
In Canada, we basically can't throw in a whole cornucopia of different strains. But we do concentrate on a hybrid that is going to give us more than anything a medicinal classification because the government does regulate that. So we are looking at the total percent THC content, the CBD, CNB, we're looking there, and we're looking for strains. So in the greenhouses, what you'll see maybe only 2 or 3 major strains, and that's basically because it's dictated by the pharmaceutical industry. In Canada, we don't even have to spend, except for BC, which can get away with a lot of things, we don't have dispensaries even yet, because it's just about to be legalized. So most of our strains are, there you go. Most of our strains are based on what the medicinal industry is going to be requested.
You know, I can imagine how, from a business point of view in Canada, the variety would be something that would be missing because, you know, in the end, you can only please so many people. But from the horticulture side, I would think that'd be a real pleasant, a pleasant thing if your responsibility is to keep these plants alive and you really only have 2 varieties. You can get into such intimate relationship with them instead of 40 plants that I can imagine that there would be a lot of pleasure in that.
My work, like I am a plant physiologist, so my work has always been is to basically look at, for instance, the climates, the different strains, how do we unfold so many leaves in a short period of time to get us into that, say, 68 to 70 day flowering period, even looking for now strains that are going to go below the 68, 60 day, work on that. So there's still, for me, it's always great to read the periodicals on the different strains, on the blendings, to see where we're getting to. Whether it be like an 80-20 indica sativa or vice versa, that type of thing. That's what makes the world go around for me. It's just always staying on top of that.
Yeah, and then again, going to paying attention to your genetics because that's extremely important. We were talking about genetic drift. The more you mass produce and clone up of a clone up of a clone, we're evolving these plants so rapidly, more rapidly than most other plant programs out there. And so paying attention to these variables that can cause a drift here, sometimes towards the positive, and sometimes towards the negative. So paying attention to those and what might be causing those expressions to come out is really important.
So Casey Rivera in the middle, we're going to start with you. And this is something that you and I were talking about yesterday. So indoor growers in many municipalities get fined or worse because they're unable to control the smell of blooming plants. What suggestions do you have for trying to keep those smells indoors?
We convinced our neighbors to start a skunk farm, so all the pressure's off of us. That's a really tough one to do, depending on your operation. Depending on if you're doing air exchanges, how sealed your environments are. There's numerous technologies that you can use. We spoke a little bit yesterday about H2O2 plasma generators that basically change the structure of things in the air, can mitigate odors, charcoal filtration. Another thing that we do within our rooms is we watch our negative to positive pressures. So there's nothing leaving the room. Our rooms are pressurized to the point to where things are staying within that room. We do really close monitoring of where that air goes. We're constantly moving around our facility, checking our HVAC units, checking any kind of exhaust units for smell. Our farm is in a rural zone, so the complaining isn't too much, but it's possible that one person does not like the skunk smell for some reason. And you really have to do everything that you possibly can. And it goes beyond the grow rooms as well too. Your trimming, your production, your dryer rooms, all those parts of the facility are really things that you need to think about in your odor mitigation.
Right.
Yeah, we don't have the option of just setting up facilities into urban areas or rural. They basically have to be set up as far as away from any type of residential area. And we do use scrubbers, and we do use types of odor emitters, but it's not really a problem because we don't have it. We're so far out. It's like in Canada, if a pig farmer wants to set up a new pig farm, he's not allowed to be within 100 miles of any area because of the pig odor. So I guess for us, it's best to find a pig farm and then set up a new facility, because then you can't differentiate between the smells sooner or later. It burns your nose out.
You don't want to be in the middle.
You don't want to be in the middle. So you don't have a lot of visitors coming in. You're way out in the middle of nowhere.
I would just add, know your community. Don't be afraid to go out there and make friends, and tell them ahead of time, hey, this is what's going on. Invite them over to see your facility. Talk to your community officials, and see what they feel and how how to go about it in the beginning, and then you're better prepared and you can budget it in. And there's several options. There's charcoal filtration. There's the positive pressures. There's you can set up the HEPA filters, which are really expensive and don't always help with odor control. And then there's biofilters too that they're doing some work on, which are not yet the go-to, but something to definitely keep an eye on. So.
I think that the idea of community outreach and involvement cannot be understated as well. I mean, every one of us who owns and works at a cannabis company is a representative of our industry as a whole. And we have to remember that for the past 60 years or so, we've all been demonized because of the unfortunate political unpopularity of the plant that we all love so much. And so they expect us to be sketchy, unclean folks who are mean and not worth talking to, right? But that's how you tend to get so much of this community pushback. When you show up at your neighbors, just like you welcome somebody in a neighborhood, maybe you don't need to bring them a bundt cake, but you show up there, and you're smiling and you're saying that you're here and you're nice and you're glad to meet them and invite them over for a tour so they can check it out. That kind of openness, and when they see these are three very friendly looking humans here, right? This is going to tend to decrease their barriers to deciding that you're nice folks and that they don't want to go call the local councilman and talk trash about you.
Yeah, really. We even take the time to have, not on the facility because we can't, but we will have a community night, and we talk about why we're actually growing medicinal, and we really try to educate. We try to educate the community or just people, and we're starting to see less abrasiveness coming back to us, and with the full understanding that this just isn't, we're affecting a medicinal industry of all ages, of young children, of people, everyone that needs, and I think we're starting to break a lot into good media. Okay. thanks for a lot of the magazines that are really putting a lot of effort into that now to show that we're not there. We are there for a purpose, and we're there for a good purpose.
Yeah, Brian said it exactly. The issue has been education. We've all been educated one way for so long. In devolving that lack of education, in my opinion, is a step, you know, and it's a step-by-step process, and it's up to all of us to do it. Everyone involved in this, I call this an industry as well as I call it a community too, and it's up to all of us in this community to reach out to our local legislatures, our law enforcement agencies, our utility companies, as well as our neighbors, to really help educate them on what this plant is doing for the world and what we can be doing with this plant.
So I think that, you know, if you want to get a whole bunch of growers to kind of like engage in really ruthless debate, like at a house party or something, you can ask them one of two questions. The first one is, which is better, indoor or outdoor? And just watch everybody go apeshit. But the other one that is also fun for pushing buttons is this next question that we're going to start with you, Casey. So, you know, growers choose their favorite substrate to grow in for a variety of reasons, but it all gets very specific when you have to scale up to large-scale industrial commercial growing. So Casey, what is your preferred substrate for commercial use and why?
Right, so this is something that we've been tackling recently. We're basically a drain-to-waste indoor facility, and we do a little outdoor, like we said before. And at that time, we were spending about $120,000 a year on substrate. And we were using a lot of chelated nutrients and whatnot. But what we found is that by switching to a recycled organic living soil, we're able to cut costs, reuse our soil. There's no-till methods where you basically just feed your pots a lot of organic living material, so you create this perfect environment to grow beneficial bacteria and fungi, and basically just remove the plant and put a new one in. And you know, you're cutting down on pH, you know, testing, pHing your soil, making sure that it's at the sufficient level for nutrient uptake. And you know, you're not messing with dirty reservoirs that you have to clean all the time. So just as far as cost efficiencies go, that's one of the things that you really need to consider, in my opinion. It is a little bit of a touchy subject, but anyway, I read a couple articles I want to share with you guys because I think that it's really good information. So if you want to write them down, great. I'll just shout them out real quick. So High Times has a couple articles. One's called 7 Habits of Highly Effective Pot Growers that I thought had a lot of really good information about using beneficials in the soil. And then also another article on growing for maximum flavor. And then a book called Teaming with Microbes.
Yeah, the Teaming with Microbes book is awesome. Yeah. So Brian, you want to take a swing at that?
Yeah, I have to go two ways. For the large industry, they look at just a peat-light mix, and I'm supposed to be selling a peat perlite mix, but the other half of me, it's like you say, is coming up with a good organic mix. And I would usually then, every year, I would add a third new to that mix, only to get the biomass working again. Because the biomass can get quite lazy after a while, and salted out sometimes and that. So if you've done a flush and you re-energize, because if it's totally organic, you do have to understand that all your organic feeds need the biomass and the microbes to break them down into an elemental source of nutrient. But I always find still, if I have to look at what I would do it that way, but then I have to work with large greenhouses where they do use a peat perlite. They will use mycorrhiza in it, but they don't use a lot of organics. They use like inorganic salts. They don't have the choice. The owners, the investors who are saying, we want this yield, we want it this fast, in a short period of time, this is what you do. So we have both. I have to work with both sides of the industry.
Casey, before you go, I just want to point out tucked in Brian's answer was a new awesome grower disc. Man, you got lazy biomass. That's nice. I'm gonna have to keep that one around. All right, Casey. So, what are your thoughts on substrates?
So to me, substrates is basically a tool. Depending on your business model, depending on what your outcome is, you can use any variety of substrates and succeed. Personally, we go with regenerative soils. We're an indoor farm as well. We do have some hoop houses. We do grow a little bit outdoors, but we're indoors as well too. And we use a regenerative soil approach. So we work with a local company that builds our soils based off of the recommendations that I give and the blends that I give. They regenerate it for us, recompost it, bring it back. So we've developed a really good program. Yeah, we could do this in-house, but right now we don't have the time or space in our facility. So we outsource that to a local company that we work directly with on each of our blends. We don't just have one bloom blend. We don't just have one vegetative blend. And that goes into learning your plants. Each specific variety likes a little bit different thing. And yeah, you could supplement that with a nutrient. You could supplement that with a foliar. But giving your plants that beneficial right off the bat in that root system is a great approach. One of the terms that I hear a lot is a drain to waste, and a lot of people feel like the soil is that, okay, well, you're running off. Well, honestly, if you're optimizing your facility, then you're not wasting any water. What I've kind of redeveloped that term into is a feed to use. And one thing that we do is we pay close attention to how that plant is reacting to how much water we're feeding it, how much nutrients we're applying to it. And at that point, we're able to adjust our scheduling as well as our partner planting to feed everything optimally so we don't have any drain to waste. There is zero water that comes out of our facility that is not used by the plant. There are benefits to using other types of growing methods. We use aeroponics in all of our cloning just because that's what our schedule allows best for. It saves a lot of space, it saves a lot of time, and if you're doing it right, you can produce a really healthy root system very fast. Starting in the vegetative mode in all of our mothers, our research, and our blooms, we use the regenerative soil. And paying attention to your soil is key. One thing that we do is we get our leaf surface, or our leaf tested, so we can see our biology going on in our leaf, our elements, our minerals going on the leaf surface. We also test our soil as well too. We test the soil when it comes in, so we can get a baseline on what our soil is looking like, not just mineral-wise, but bacteria-wise. We also test it at peak performance of plant, and if our plants are unhealthy as well too. We'll do soil tests, because that's really going to tell you what's going on with that plant. Do I have a magnesium deficiency, or am I giving it too much calcium, locking out my magnesium? So paying attention to your soil, paying attention to your foliars, paying attention to your plants is really key. I keep tying it back to the same thing, but it really goes from start to finish, paying attention to your operation. And you can do it sustainably. Use soil sustainably, use hydroponics sustainably, but it comes back to what kind of business are you creating for yourselves.
Just one thing to add is I always look at the percent duration in the mix. Basically, we always sell oxygen short of a mix, but say if I have a mix that's too tight and I can't get rid of the system can't get rid of the excess of free water that's filling all the large pores, which should only be filled with, after watering, oxygen. People have to understand how important oxygen is. Oxygen is, as a plant physiologist, we call them O2 receptors. If I can get oxygen, if my mix can get rid of all of its excess water in less than 3 hours and get oxygen back in there, a lot of your minerals or elements are basically looking for an O2 to group into and to move into the plant twice as fast. So there is a speed for that. Also too, I have to promote myself the fact that if I get a lot of oxygen, I get a lot of root hairs. We have a lot of these so-called stationary that hold on and keep the plant tight, but you want to be looking for all those roots that keep on subdividing, small roots, root hairs. 95% of water and nutrient taken up by a plant is taken up through those little root hair caps. So it's by getting a lot of root hairs, we increase the root surface area by 20 to 30%. Meaning that, so anytime you put something through there, whether it's just pH buffered water or nutrients and that, you've created a root surface area so that your nutrients, you have much more nutrients not going through as a leachate, but going up into the plant.
Yeah, and with that is paying attention to that, paying attention to the life in your soil that's actually feeding your plants is really important. Are we creating a good environment for our bacteria? Is our rhizosphere healthy? Is it active? Is it producing for our plant? Is it giving our plants the beneficials that it needs to succeed? And paying attention to that oxygen is what's keeping those bacteria alive and healthy. Creating an anaerobic soil system is a really tough thing, and people get Facilium wilts. A lot of pathogens can come out of that, not paying attention to your soil.
Right on. So Casey Rivera, while you're on the mic, we're going to start this next question with you. So some growers build their entire grow around the style of watering that they intend to do. Many of the solutions used in smaller grows simply do not scale up to commercial use. So what is a watering solution that you believe is a good one for consideration by new cannabis producers?
Got it. That's a good one. At Yerba Buena, we started out with, we have a lot of new farmers on the team. And I'm an educator. I really like teaching people. I don't just like telling people how to do it. I like them experiencing things on their own in a safe zone so we don't lose the farm. We started out hand watering everything. And in our facility, we have over 7,000 plants. So if you can imagine the time it takes to hand water 7,000 plants. But what that did is it educated all of our farmers on what's the soil saturation rate? What is the plant doing? Paying attention to the plant while you're watering it, how much is going in there. It kind of connects you a little bit. The plants are connected to us, and the more we connect ourselves with those plants, the more we pay attention and understand what they need. Recently, we've shifted into a automated drip system, which right now we're on about version 3.5, because that's just how it goes. There's no perfect plug-and-play system. Everything kind of needs to get designed by your own. But we've developed a drip system after learning these metrics, after learning exactly what our plants need. By hand watering them, we've been able to move that into our drip system and been very successful at not only minimizing our time that it takes, the human hours that it takes to water your system, but also effectively giving the plants exactly what it needs every time. I can't count to 30 seconds the same 30 seconds that Brian may count or Casey may count. So telling someone, giving it 20 seconds, I may count 20 like a bartender, or I may count 20 as a 1,000, 1,000. So having a system to where it's exactly the same every time, and then understanding what your plants are doing. Are they uptaking it? Are they not uptaking it? Do I need to water every other day? So knowing that can really help dial in and optimize your watering systems.
Yeah, I agree 100% on that. Actually, we have several thousand plants at our facility also, and we started out hand watering everything. And in fact, half of our facility is still hand watered. We have implemented some drip irrigation in new rooms that we've built recently. And having the background on the hand watering and getting to know your plants at that point has very much helped us dial in our drip irrigation.
So Brian, how do you water in Canada?
Through drip irrigation, but again, when a facility's 10 acres, 15 acres, that's a lot of plants. We go very high tech. I've done, as a plant biologist, I do evapotranspiration protocols and data, and per variety and strain, because we all know that the leaf mass is different for all of them. But then through computers, we put it through a pulse system. And I know a plant that's only 3 weeks old, and then a plant that's 60 days old, how many liters of water it's actually losing based on the foot candle reading or the light reading of that day. And we just feed that back into a pulse system, and it pulses the water through liters, and it pulses the water on a daily basis. Because what we're trying to do is basically reduce as much stress. Like, unfortunately, plant stress does not show up, or if they tell you that, well, the plant is wilting, so it's under stress. Basically, the plant stress usually with any type of substrate shows up 3 to 4 days prior to that. And so you might miss 3 or 4 days of important watering, where So what we're basically doing is trying to meet the daily requirements. But you still got to be a good grower. You still have to go out there and once in a while check the root system. You have to lift that pot. I have a hard time not doing that. I mean, when I was just a grower, I mean, you were up there at 6 in the morning lifting every pot to say, do I water or don't I water? Because in those days it was all hand watering. Now, a lot of the young growers that I watch and walk with, you looked at the plant yet? No, the computer's doing that all for me. And I says, turn the computer off, go out there and learn how to be a plantsman. Like with any plant, whether it's with cannabis or not, if you can be a rootsman instead of a plantsman, because where do your top part of the plant come from? Like you say, if you maintain that ideal or good rhizosphere.
So we've got some time for a couple questions. So do I have any hands from someone who'd like to ask one? Yes, sir.
My question is, in Canada, if you're going to reduce the amount of strains you have, wouldn't that limit the terpene profiles available for patients?
Yeah, we're not reducing the strains, but we're always working on still developing the strains to what we still medicinally can classify and produce what the industry's looking for. So it's not that, oh no, sorry, we're never going to eliminate strains. We're just working with them to see what gives us the best, what we can do at that time.
And I think in Brian's case, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the way that the Canadian system works is your customer is not actually the public. Your customer is a pharmaceutical company that's telling you what they want.
Yeah.
And so essentially it's the pharmaceutical company that's choosing the terpene profile they're going for.
Right.
It's not in the grower's hands, which, you know.
Yeah,
right.
but the pharmaceutical asks me, and I'm always at wit's end with the pharmaceutical companies because they're not looking at the plant, at its potential and what it should be grown for. Just like they're just looking at one entity of it, which is not going to work. It's not going to work if we, just like you say, if we start getting in tunnel vision, we're going to be in big problems.
Yeah, just turning out cannabinoids is never the solution.
No, but that's what sells to the pharmaceuticals. Like it's like half the pharmaceutical oral medicines we take. Give me a break. There's 40 of them that do the same thing, but they produce 200 side effects. That's, you know.
You're our people, Brian.
Yes. Thank you, Brian.
Yes, yeah.
When you test your soil and your leaves, are you doing that in-house? Are you doing your own testing?
No, we send them to an analytical lab that does agriculture testing.
Okay.
And depending on the state, there's certain labs that can do it and certain labs that, if they're USDA funded, won't touch it. So just reach out to the local labs and see who's doing what. Some labs might test tissue testing, some labs might test soil, some might do both. So just reach out to them. Usually people that run the labs are, for lack of a better term, like myself, they're pretty geeky, so they love talking about this stuff. And they may be able to help you with another lab or another lab. So in-house testing, I do not recommend.
Okay.
What's the turnaround time on that test?
Well, in Oregon, it kind of depends on the season. There's a lot of agriculture in Oregon, you know, and if it's berry season, oh, you won't even touch them for at least a month, you know. And so it just depends on what's happening with the rest of agriculture. Until we develop cannabis-specific labs that can encompass all these types of tests, we gotta rely on agriculture labs.
I may just add, when you are taking leaf samples, make sure you're taking the right leaf samples. Basically, we often refer to what we call the most recently matured leaf. I mean, someone might say, well, I want to test that yellow leaf at the bottom. That's not going to work. I want to test the one in the middle. You have to test the one that's actively taking up all the nutrients at one time. And soil samples, if you're using soil, then they do one type of test. Now, if you switch over to, like, say, a peat-like mix where there's no soil in it, it's always good to let the lab know that, because then that is a totally different test. Yeah.
We have time for one more. Yes, sir.
Brian, you were saying that, talking about increasing the density of root hair endings, right? Because
Yeah.
that's where you
Yeah.
get the most absorption. What do you think about biochar, compost tea, or is there anything else that you would recommend, any of you would recommend for increasing that growth of the plant?
Oh, go on.
No, go ahead.
Oh, no. You-
I'll fill in there.
Like, again, when we get to what I call lazy soil, it needs to be things like biochar and other amendments that are going to actually be symbiotic with the root system. They're always a good addition. And again, it is based on, you should know your soil. Your plants will tell you that, you know what, I'm getting a little sluggish, I'm getting a little grayish teal blue instead of that vibrant green. So yeah, there is good benefits to those, but again, all I can really say is that totally, when you want to try these new products, there's enough information on the internet to learn about these products. You should totally understand that product before you use it, so that you're using it for the right purpose. Because sometimes they cost a lot.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. One thing that we've been working with recently is worm castings. And so worm castings are a really good amendment because they have so much biological activity in them, and you're not going to hurt your plants by applying them. You can't really apply too much. So it's a good place to start. And Vermicera is here, which is what we use. So they're good people to talk to if you have any more questions.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of different companies right now emerging in the bacteria type of the market. A lot of people think feed, when really we should kind of digress ourselves away from the feed mentality and think about our biodiversity of our soil. Bokashi, certain bacteria that promote phosphorus uptake instead of adding a PK booster in the middle of your peak week. There's different bacteria that are responsible for doing different things. So like Brian said, understanding what that product does and when you should apply it and how you should apply it is really important to maximize that. You're not going to want to put a phosphorus boosting bacteria on at the beginning. Maybe you will, depending on how much stem growth. It just depends on the strain that you want to grow as well too. So learning those products, learning what that bacteria does. And again, Jeff Lowenfels, that he's produced 3 different books now that are amazing books, teaming with microbes, teaming with fungi, and teaming with bacteria. Incredibly knowledgeable books on how to use those and why.
Do you want to finish up there, Brian?
Well, just the fact that getting back to the, make sure that your media is a media that's going to be well oxygenated after drainage, because all of these additives, they can get very lethargic and lazy if your rhizosphere is not a healthy rhizosphere. So you're pouring a lot of money into something and going, why isn't it working? It will work, but you still have to, before you get to the get-go of all these amendments, is you have to be very confident and healthy with the rhizosphere that you're growing.
What a fantastic collection of experience that you shared today. Thank you very much to Casey Hubbs, Casey Rivero, and Brian Cannon. Thank you.